Приветствую всех на моем канале, меня зовут Киди, и сегодня мы будем играть в игру под названием The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. Слышал я про эту игрушку, видел ее в ютубе, в интернете, но никогда в нее не играл и не знаю в целом ни сюжета, ничего, поэтому давайте попробуем, нажимаем начать игру и смотрим.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard. Orders came to him through a monitor on his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy. And then one day, something very peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on the monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and stepped out of his office.
Так, ну игра у нас уже началась. Вот такая вот у нас небольшая предыстория. Так, сейчас покопаюсь чуть-чуть в настройках, наверное. Уберу сглаживание сильное, чтобы не лагало. Все равно подлагивает. Окей, я понял. Ладно, средние настройки ставим. Сейчас вроде должно быть получше. Ладно, смотрим. Стэнли у нас жил обычной работой офисного работника. Но что-то случилось, и никто к нему не пришел, никто не дал ему инструкцию. Он не знает, что ему делать. Ну что я нажимаю? Я даже не нажимаю ни на что. Ну ладно. Давайте посмотрим тогда. Мы работали в офисе под номером 427. Хорошо. Дверь закрыта.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Стэнли решил? Хорошо.
No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
Каждый раз, когда мы будем делать какое-либо действие в этой игре, наш голос, получается, свыше, он будет это все комментировать. И мы можем выбирать, как мы будем поступать. Тут есть несколько концовок, вроде как. Так, мне все равно не нравится, почему-то подлагивает. Хорошо, берем вот так. Так, ну вроде получше, вроде бы. Я, правда, не знаю. Ладно, давайте пойдем. Мы больше ничего не можем делать. Дверь закрыта. Окей, хорошо. Это переговорная? Нет, не переговорная. Ладно, видимо, мы можем идти только туда, куда нам указывает игра. Там, где есть открытые двери. Какая-то лестница. Кто тут уронил? I hate Mondays. Я ненавижу понедельники. Согласен, согласен. Хорошо, что я снимаю не в понедельник. Так, окей. Что это такое? А могу приблизить, посмотреть, нет? Откройте хоть что-нибудь мне.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Стэнли вошел влево. Тогда мы войдем вправо, потому что мы не
This
Стэнли.
was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Скорее всего, да, скорее всего, Стэнли хотел полюбоваться сначала комнатой отдыха. Вообще никого нет. Пусто. Что же случилось-то? Вообще ничего не могу открыть. Никакой дверь.
Yes, truly a room worth admiring. It had really been worth the detour after all, just to spend a few moments here in this immaculate, beautifully constructed room. Stanley simply stood here, drinking it all in.
Слушайте, ну вообще выглядит прикольно. Мне нравится вот этот вот порожек, что тут переход такой небольшой. Ну,
Yes, really, really worth it being here in the room. A room so utterly captivating that even though all your co-workers have mysteriously vanished, here you sit looking at these chairs and some paintings. Really worth it.
окей, хорошо. Нашему комментатору не нравится, что мы сюда пришли и нарушили последовательность.
Stanley's obsession with this room bordered on creepy and reflected poorly on his overall personality. It's possible that this is why everyone left.
Ты что ты такое буровишь? Я просто пришел сюда посмотреть. Я решил пойти сюда, какая разница? Время,
Stanley
кстати.
sat around waiting for more dialogue, but when a long time had passed and there was no more, he decided that the game was trying to send him a message.
Да нет, я просто здесь... Ладно, окей, пойдем дальше.
But
Реплик
at
не
last,
будет.
he'd had enough of the amazing room and took the first open door on his left to get back to business.
Это переговорный, да? А тут что? Пойдем сюда. Тут поинтереснее, на самом деле.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Ну, слушай, нет. До этого момента мы всегда следовали инструкциям. Всегда все выполняли. А сейчас мы просто решили пойти немножко другим путем. Какая разница, все равно тут никого нет. Кого нам искать? Так, окей. Что это у нас такое? Do not jump from the cargo. Окей, не прыгать отсюда.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about.
О ком я забыл?
Please, stop trying to make every decision by yourself. Now, I'm not asking for me, I'm asking for her.
Для нее?
This is it, Stanley. Your chance to redeem yourself. To put your work aside. To let her back into your life.
Кого?
She's been waiting.
Где она ждет? Кто ждет? Здесь, что ли? На складе? Дверь закрылась, ладно. А кто нас ждет-то? Ой.
That's her, Stanley.
Это она,
You
Стэнли.
need to be the one to do this. To reach out to her. If you can truly place your faith in another,
А кто это?
then pick up the phone.
Все, я поднял трубку. Так, и чё?
Stanley, is that you? Hold on, sweetie. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm just pulling the bread out of the oven. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, now, I want you
Давай.
to come in and tell me all about your
Ой.
Gotcha. Oh, come on. Did you actually think you had a loving wife?
Ты чё так
They want to
шутишь?
commit their life to you. I'm trying to make a point here, Stanley. I'm trying to get you to see something. Come inside. Let me show you what's really going on here.
Ты чё? Зачем так делаешь? Это ты? Ты так
This is a
выглядишь?
very sad story about the death
В
of a man
смысле
named
смерти?
Stanley.
Я живой. Перед тобой стою. Доброе утро, сотрудник 427. Нажмите L на своей клавиатуре.
Stanley is quite a boring fellow. He has a job that demands nothing of him.
Это я тут так
Every
живу?
button that he pushes is a reminder of the inconsequential nature of his existence.
Как-то грустно вообще. Нажми Т. А я не буду нажимать Т, я на L нажму. А я не могу, ладно.
Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told
Да потому что
to
я
do.
больше ничего не могу
Now
сделать.
he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life.
Да я не хочу нажимать на эту кнопку. А если не буду нажимать? Стой, вот я постою сейчас, да? Подожду. Вот не буду я нажимать. И что случится? Нажмите F. Press F to pay respect. Не буду. Что ты мне скажешь? Сколько мне еще ждать? Ладно, уговорил.
But in his mind, in his mind he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful. And each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him.
Короче, работая на своей работе, мы сидели и мечтали о каких-то путешествиях, каких-то приключениях и так далее, новых открытиях, а мы ничего не можем делать. Нажмите G, чтобы посмотреть ТВ. У нас есть ТВ?
And so he began to fantasize about his own job.
Ой.
First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that
Подожди,
all of his
это так было? Нет,
coworkers,
тут
his
был
boss,
диван.
everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought excited him terribly.
Так, поиграть с детьми.
So he went further. He imagined that he came to two open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold.
Приготовить ужин.
As he wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths and destinations.
Почему у меня квартира превращается в какой-то офис?
An enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable.
Рассказать детям Stanley Parable? Мы создали игру.
Such a wonderful fantasy. And so in his head, he relived it again. And then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time.
Сказать жене, что любите ее, окей.
But there is no answer.
Да чё, что это такое? Зачем?
In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets which life is the real one.
Пойти спать.
And I'm trying to tell him this,
Да я пойду
that in
поспать.
this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
А я нажму.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself?
Так да поставь зеркало, я посмотрю на себя. Чтобы не задавать вопросов. А если... Подожди. Как долго мне нужно ждать, чтобы... Окей, хорошо, подождем. Подожди, мы можем что-нибудь сделать? Нет вообще в этой жизни. Ладно, нажму.
I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley. Not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must.
Давай.
Perhaps. Well, maybe this time he'll see. Maybe this time.
Ну?
And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button.
Умрите.
And I tried.
А что происходит вообще? Мы начали заново?
All of his co-workers were gone.
Так, окей, ладно, пойдем тогда, не
Stanley
знаю.
decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Давай в митинг-рум пойдем. Митинг-рум, блядь. Несанкционированный митинг-рум. Так, я вошел в левую. Ты скажешь что-нибудь, нет? Что я там красава, типа вошел в левую. Так, ну это переговор, ну окей. Ну, крутяк. Ой, я такую же презентацию в PowerPoint делал. Так, ладно, пойдем. Кабинет начальника. Хорошо. Broom closet. О, дверь открывается.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track.
Ну, подожди. В смысле ничего нет? Смотри, тут сколько всего. Какие-то детальки. Ключи.
No choice to make, no path to follow, just an empty
Изоленты всякие, коробочки.
No reason to still be here.
Не было смысла, да, я останусь здесь, вопреки твоим словам. Я найду что-нибудь
It was
сейчас.
baffling that Stanley was still just sitting in the broom closet. He wasn't even doing anything. At least if there was something to interact with, he'd be justified in some way.
Да тут очень много всего
He's
интересного.
literally just standing there doing sweet FA.
Да вот, смотри, тут сколько всего. Материалов. Трубы вон, лампочка.
Are you really still in the broom closet?
Да.
Standing around doing nothing? Why? Please offer me some explanation here. I'm genuinely confused.
Ну смотри, ты мне говоришь уйти отсюда. И говоришь, что ничего тут интересного нет. Но посмотри, сколько здесь всего. Вот это что, например? А, это этот.
You do realize
Кабель.
there's no choice or
Наверное.
anything in here, right? If I'd said Stanley walked past the broom closet, at least you would have had a reason for exploring it to find out. But it didn't even occur to me because literally this closet is of absolutely no significance
Если
to
бы-
the story whatsoever.
Если
I
бы,
never would have thought to mention it.
если бы это было неважно, ты бы не стал бы мне говорить уйти отсюда, понимаешь? Тут что-то
Maybe
есть.
to you this is somehow its own branching path.
Ну, конечно.
Maybe when you go talk about this with your friend, you'll say, "Oh, did you get the broom closet ending? The broom closet ending was my favorite."
My
I
favorite,
hope your
yeah.
friends find this concerning.
Ну, надейся, надейся. А я сейчас дойду до своего.
Stanley was fat and ugly and really, really stupid.
Да ты
He probably
охуел,
only
блядь.
got the job because of a family connection. That's how stupid he is. That or with drug money. Also, Stanley is addicted to drugs and hookers.
Нет. Осуждаю. Ты чё?
Well, I've
Обзывается
come to a
тут.
very definite conclusion about what's going on right now.
Да в смысле я умер? Я вот, я живой хожу.
You got to this
Смотри,
broom
дверь
closet,
открыл.
explored it a bit, and were just about to leave because there's nothing here, when a physical malady of some sort shut down your central nervous system and you collapsed on the keyboard.
Да где здесь
In a
клавиатура?
situation like this, the responsible thing is to alert someone nearby so as to ensure that your body is taken care of.
Да кого
before
тут
it
никого
begins
нет?
to
Кого ты там
decompose.
оповестишь?
Hello? Anyone who happens to be nearby? The person at this computer is dead.
Да не умер
They have
я.
fallen prey to any number of your countless human physiological vulnerabilities. It's indicative of the long-term sustainability of your species. Please remove their corpse from the area and instruct another human to take their place, making sure they understand basic first-person video game mechanics and filling them in on the history of narrative tropes in video gaming, so that the irony
ладно,
and
окей, хорошо.
insightful commentary of this game is not lost on them.
Да не пропадут
Alright,
они даром.
When you've done that, just step out into the hallway.
Давай. Ну и что будет? Я погибну здесь? Или что? Мы уже один раз погибли. Сколько времени, кстати? Ебать. По 24 часа в подсобке. Почему ты ничего не говоришь? Давай. Я сейчас реально уйду отсюда. Нет, я буду ждать до конца. Ладно, я понял, короче. Ничего не происходит пока что. Я тут сколько уже, минут 5 стою.
Second player, it's good to have you on board. I guarantee you can't do any worse than the person who came before you.
А я вернусь сейчас сюда. Смотри.
You too? Unbelievable. I'm at the mercy of an entire species of invalids.
Иди нахуй.
Perhaps there's a monkey nearby you can hand the controls to. A fish? Fungus? Look, you can hammer out the details. I'm not particularly picky. I'll just be waiting for when you're ready to pick up the story again.
Хорошо, ладно. Я сейчас постою, сейчас давай еще минуту. Ну ладно, не минуту, секунд 10. Ладно, хватит. А если я вернусь? Понял, все, ладно. Пойдем, окей. Так, запись идет.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Ладно, пойдем в офис, хорошо. Я бы, конечно, вниз ходил, но ладно. О, ебать. Вот это офис у вас? Executive bathroom. Так как босс знает, что босс говорит, если босс страдает, блядь, идите нахуй просто. Кто это написал вообще? А что, ничего нет? Я не могу здесь, да, ничего сделать? Я могу чисто вот это вот прочитать, да? И уйти отсюда. Окей, хорошо. Где секретарша? Теперь я секретарша. У меня 2 телефона. Что-то неудобно тебе, по-моему, нет? 2 телефона так далеко, хотя ты можешь подъехать на своем креслице. Это что такое? Босс там, а я сюда пойду. Бизнес-стратегия. Стратегия? За что? За что пандочку? Так, ладно. Есть лифт. Стоит ли мне заходить в лифт? Это босс, да? Ладно, давайте сходим к боссу, не пойдем в лифт.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was
Зачем такие огромные? Тут 3-4 этажа.
Was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him.
Мы сейчас узнаем все.
And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret.
Какой?
2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
Не знал, абсолютно.
By simply pushing random buttons.
Мне очень повезло просто.
Stanley happened to
что происходит?
correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. He stepped into the newly opened passageway.
Это что такое? Это секретный бункер босса? Молокососа? Что за темнота? Ой. Страшно. Тут будут скримеры, нет? Страшилка? Нажимай. Че, мы прям вниз едем? Все. Лодинг.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar.
Согласен.
It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
Блин, реально тут фасилити устроили какой-то. В Stay Out of the House вернулись, тут сейчас зло
Stanley
просто.
walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Mind Control Escape? Ух ты. Ладно. Возможно, мы сюда еще вернемся когда-нибудь. Что это такое?
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Отважился, конечно. Идем. Так, а тут что? Еще кнопка. Это камера.
Now the monitors jumped to life. Their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building. Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen. And Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place.
Уволен.
Freedom meant nothing.
Там что-то закрашено, не знаю. А где мы? 427. Вот тут где-то были. Вон, да, вон наш кабинет. Ну, естественно, нас там нет. Тут почему-то камера не работает. Уволен. Больше ничего нет, вроде. Да и все. Так, ладно. Это что такое? Это человек наверх.
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this
естественно.
time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly?
И какой-то ужас вообще.
No. He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it.
И что мы будем делать?
Life in someone else's control? Never.
Never.
It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world?
Походу, да. Так а что случилось со всеми?
But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy, or sad, or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very
Что это такое?
place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
Консоль не работает. Тут дверь. Так, окей. Ну тут очень много кнопочек каких-то непонятных. Они разные звуки издают, в зависимости от цвета. Так, ладно, пойдем. Facility Power. Нам нужно отключить Facility Power. Это что такое? 5. Дай 5. Mind Controls. Auto Awaiting Input. Окей, давай. System Power.
And when at last he found the source of the room's power, he knew it was his duty, his obligation,
Ну, я
to put
положу.
an end to this
Давай,
horrible
конец.
place and to everything it stood for.
Off. Так, и что теперь? Титры?
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty.
Так.
Was it over?
Was it over?
Yes. He had won. He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved.
Согласен.
Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do,
Ух ты,
or how
красиво.
to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door.
Ну, я согласен. Какой-то Skyrim тут вообще. Все, мы на
Stanley
свободе.
felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Вот хэппи, реально. Так, это получается еще одна из концовок, правильно? Ну, да, это еще одна концовка, вторая концовка. Ладно, давайте посмотрим еще одну, я думаю, мы закончим.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Так, я думаю, как мы сейчас поступим? Мы пойдем meeting room.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Ага. Так, окей. Meeting room.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of
Там
disbelief,
больше заходить не
Stanley
будем.
decided to go up to his boss's office. Coming
А
to
мы
a
пойдем
staircase,
вниз.
Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Мы вниз пойдем. Стэнли наверх не пойдет. Стэнли не хочет. Что это такое? Это еще записка? Машина.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All
Согласен.
because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley.
Вот о чем.
Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of
Походу,
my
реально.
co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations.
да?
For example, Why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down?
Кстати, да.
Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for
Потому что
that
Stanley — это
matter,
игра.
these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real.
Да, действительно,
And
это
at
просто очень
last,
странно.
He came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up
дверь
soon.
закрывается.
I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment and my wife and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
Как это странно. Так, окей, ну мы оказались все в том же месте.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
Ну, Стэнли сошел с ума?
This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work.
Это Стэнли?
But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day, the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
Окей, Стэнли умер. Сошел с ума и умер, капец. Еще одна концовка, так получается, правильно? Да, еще это одна концовка. Ладно, дорогие друзья, если захотите продолжение, конечно, я в этой игре... Да, блять. Не так уж много чего-то комментирует, так как тут есть голос, который постоянно что-то комментирует, и я могу лишь двигаться и иногда какие-то свои давать. Вставлять 5 копеек. Поэтому, если захотите продолжение каких-то других концовок, то напишите в комментарии. Всем спасибо за просмотр. Подпишитесь на канал, поставьте лайк, нажмите на колокольчик. Всем удачи и всем пока.